Well, it is time once again for us to take a look at some of our news for this Wednesday morning. While the rest of the world is mourning the loss of Carrie Fisher, there are some other things that happened that you might want to know about. For instance, did you know that Pakistan and Israel right now in real life are actually squaring off and threatening each other with nuclear strikes based on fake news? Some kind of an exchange that happened on social media has now been taken out of context. It's been twisted around, and Pakistan, who's been a nuclear power since the late 90s, and Israel, who has been a nuclear power for, we suppose, since the 1970s. There's never been actual verification, but everybody's pretty sure that they have quite a good stockpile of nuclear weapons. Both of these countries threatening each other with nuclear strikes over a social media comment. The investigators note that as they've been recovering pieces of that Tu-154 that crashed in the Black Sea on Christmas Day, no signs of explosion, no signs of fire on board that jet, which means that they're looking at either some kind of a failure with the fuel system, some other kind of engine failure, or some kind of a pilot action or error. They're still investigating. Did you hear about the mall violence across the country? On the day after Christmas, apparently there were fights involving hundreds of people in cities all around the country, and a lot of it, apparently, at least according to the police, was set in motion by teenagers on social media, basically saying, hey, there's going to be a fight at such and such a place. Next thing you know, dozens of people showing up to be a part of the fight. I don't get it. Down in Cuba, HuffPo reports that Cuba has now officially banned naming statues or public places after Fidel Castro. Not because they don't want to honor Fidel, but because the best way of honoring him is by carrying on his tradition of revolution, not a cult of personality. The Israeli defense minister has made a public statement calling on Jews to leave France in light of what has happened in France lately in terms of their participation with the UN and calling and condemnation on Israel, but also in light of a conference that's scheduled for January 15th, in which it's pretty much expected it's going to be a worldwide condemnation of Israel, and it's focused right there in France. So defense minister saying, Jews, if you're in France, get out. Trump Tower was evacuated on Tuesday. Apparently there was a suspicious package. They cleared the place out, brought in the bomb squad. Package had toys in it, but it was enough to a bit of a panic in New York City. The outgoing UN chief, according to the Russian defense minister, has praised Russia's role in assuring international peace and security. Of course, this is according to what the Russians said after the conversation took place. The former leader of Argentina, Kirchner, has been indicted. She's been charged with corruption. And you heard about the impeachment of the president of South Korea. Well, after she was impeached, now more politics, and they're talking about possibly having Ban Ki-moon run for president of South Korea. In the last day alone, 26 different ceasefire violations in Syria, according to the Russian Reconciliation Center. Meanwhile, in Syria, Hezbollah has opened up a hunt for the leaders of the Syrian opposition, actually intentionally assassinating them at a distance. And a Moscow court has recognized the events back in February of 2014 in Ukraine as a coup d'etat, which is interesting, given the relationship between the Ukrainian people and the Russian people. And now to recognize that as a coup d'etat, it could open up all kinds of other court claims for the future. And lastly, as you may know, if you look at the calendar, we see that the 100th anniversary of the October Revolution is coming up, and it is going to be celebrated in Russia. However, they're saying it's going to be celebrated mostly academically, and don't politicize it. Some of the things that are on our scope, which you can listen to if you go to my website, radiofreespeech.com. I've got the audio version, full half an hour of news, and it involves both international, national, and Alaska news. The Berlin truck attack, apparently the driver of the truck, the Polish driver, was shot hours before the attack took place. In Montenegro, they've placed 2 Russians and 3 Serbs on an international wanted list, and the Pentagon has revived a Cold War anti-tank weapon for mass deployment in Europe. Tensions are on the rise around the world. Take a look at the Alaska news, and our commentary today is going to focus a little bit on this issue of fake news, but also on how media in general is intentionally manipulating people You'll get my view on it. And, of course, I'd like to hear from you. Send me an email, steve@radiofreespeech.com. You have a tip for me, either a news tip or something you'd like me to comment on. Once again, that email address, steve@radiofreespeech.com. Thanks. Tell all your friends.